It was an honour to be the author of this book, together with my co-author, Brian Keneipp, The King Who Came to Earth. This is the biography of, I believe, one of, if not the greatest masters ever to walk our earth, a true avatar. And we started this project 6 years ago. It was 6 years in the making, actually, to the published version in August of 2019. It's an incredible story. I realized during the course of writing it that it was something which had its own life. It's something which determined virtually where it had to go. It wasn't up to me as an author or Brian to really decide that. We were really trying to catch up and see where it led. And there are no holds barred. We don't hold back at all. We tell the true story of who this great master really was. We actually tell things that even he didn't like to speak of in public about his great stature. And of course he was a master of great modesty and humility, so it was a detective job as well to uncover the real greatness that was there, really staring us in the eyes. It's a remarkable story of a warrior, of a teacher, of a man of tremendous compassion, of a true lover of the Mother Earth, in the real sense of the word love, someone who dedicated his whole life, that's 24 hours a day in his case, both to the Mother Earth and to the people of this planet. And it reveals the fact that he really wasn't from our world. Hence, he was the king who came to Earth.
Well, Richard, you knew Dr. King very well. You worked with him for decades. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, I was fortunate to first meet him in, I think, 1972, so I knew him for 25 years, but I was extremely close for the last 20 years of his life, and by that I mean I spoke to him virtually every day, either on the phone or in person, in America, in the UK when he came here. So I was very fortunate to see him at close quarters. He was a strict master, and you could feel slightly nervous when I first got to know him around him because of that. He had this mind, razor-like, sharp mind that cut to the core of whatever he focused on. But he was very kind, and he had a very gentle side and a tremendous sense of humour, I must say. Many in a time he'd have us rolling on the floor almost with his humour, and likewise he would laugh too when we tried to entertain him, as it were. I would say that what was remarkable to me, among many things, I'll just pick out a couple of things. One was his total, undiminished commitment to his mission, which I've never seen, which I don't think you do see on this planet, actually. This is one of his true interplanetary credentials, you might say. You'll see people who'll be a president, an admiral, take a line of work which is demanding, but it won't be constant. There'll be a break, there'll be long breaks, it'll last maybe 10 years, it'll last maybe 20 years. But in his case, his mission was over 40 years, over 43 years in fact, and he was on call 24 hours a day during the whole of that 43 years, and you knew it if you were around him at all. Even if you were having a humorous time, a nice meal and a drink sometimes, occasionally, he was still on call, and it could stop abruptly and immediately if it needed to. And he would then have to take a transmission or prepare himself, do whatever was required, go into a mission, save our world. This was extremely unusual. And having spoken to people like his wife, who I knew very well, and others from the early days in England in the 1950s and in America in the 1960s, I can tell, and this was interesting when writing the biography, that this isn't just something that those of us who met him in the 1970s discovered. This was all the time. He was always like that. It didn't change. That's one thing that I would say. Another thing I'd say about him was he was a master of great understatement at times, in that he wouldn't really tell you what he was doing for you. For example, and it happened to me and I know it happened to others, he'd give you healing, but he wouldn't tell you he was giving you healing. He might be nudging you in the ribs, but you got healed. And it happened to me, and it happened to others. And when I thanked him for it, he said, oh, no. He didn't want to go there. And on another occasion, I remember, for example, just to give an example, I was doing a spiritual practice, which I hadn't told him I was doing. It's one that he himself had done back in the 1940s or 50s. And I was doing it in his garden in Santa Barbara, and it's called the shadow practice, and you have to watch shadows, hence you need sunlight, and you do a certain mantra. And he'd gone for a rest in the afternoon, which he periodically did, and you didn't normally then see him for maybe an hour. And on this occasion, he'd gone for rest, we'd given him healing. I thought, this is my chance. It was in the afternoon, I was going to do the practice. He was up in about 1 or 2 minutes, walked out, came round, looked at me and said, that's it, boy, keep watching the shadows, and then went back to his room again. Now that's something which you might say is a psychic realization. I think it definitely empowered my practice beyond any doubt, and I could give many examples of this nature. But he didn't make any fuss about it. I said to him later, well, how did you know I was doing that? I was watching, I was doing this practice, and he didn't necessarily want to go there. So it was very unassuming. He did things not only for individuals, but for the world, far, far more than he would say. And all the time he had in his mind the betterment of humanity, and of course especially his, I would say, unique love for the Mother Earth.